and
$3.9 million.
and the 3.5 for the anticipating would be.
We are live this morning. It's Friday morning. It's your Senate Transportation Committee. And as it was noted yesterday, we're discussing the Caledonia Airport, possibly for lease for sale. And we had a good discussion yesterday on some of the committees, and we want to make sure we cover the communities and talk about what they heard yesterday and what they have any concerns. So with that, we've got a few folks here this morning. We have the Select Board Chair of Linden, Kristen Thomas. Is that correct?
Thompson.
Thompson. Okay, yeah, that's right. Thompson. Okay, yes. Would you like to lead off? Any questions? Go ahead and ask us. But I think you know basically what's going on. And, we certainly value your input of what your concerns are at this time. It's only starting. We don't know a lot about it ourselves. We're just starting to learn yesterday. We spent a great deal of time with two committees, and so it's a brand new idea. So we want to make sure that you folks back home understand what's going on. Thank you.
Well, we do appreciate that here in Linden. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I appreciate the committee making a strong effort to get some community input, even though we're on what seems to be an extremely tight timeline here. But I know you're doing your best to get the input that you need to make the best decision you can. Personally, I was able to speak to about a dozen people since we heard the news yesterday about midday. I wanted to share one opinion that someone who has been in the community a long time and has actually seen the airport when it was built said, it's nice to have the state doing something for us, not to us. And had a lot of common themes in the discussions that I had with people in the community. Number one was the opportunity for economic development here in Linden and in the broader Northeast Kingdom. We've all been aware of the loss of manufacturing jobs, good, high-paying, stable jobs over the last few decades. And that continues to be a concern here. So any project that could possibly be a ray of hope or be kind of a kickstart for additional economic development, our community is on board with, and we as a select board would support. As far as the project's impact on municipal services, we are pleased possibly to get another property put onto our grand list, which would help all taxpayers in Linden. It would also be possibly another good customer for Lindenville Electric Department, which has seen some customers leave. Large manufacturers that have left have impacted their bottom line. So we are concerned about our local utility and see that in the future, this could be a real asset if we get more development at the airport. Another factor that was mentioned was the opportunity for educational partnerships with the private investor. Within about a 30-minute radius of the airport, there are 4 high schools and 1 state college. So that could be a really good partnership. We see internships possibly, jobs, students willing to stay in the area, which has been an issue here for a long time. So yeah, we see this, the town does as a positive. We're cautiously optimistic, and we are again pleased that the legislature is going to be looking at this, and it appears that the process will be quite transparent and deliberate, which is good, because we would of course want to have input further when the RFP was to go out to potential bidders. So I'd like to pass it over to Justin Smith, our municipal administrator, and thank you again for the ability to meet with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. We're all learning a lot in the last couple of days. It's something that we want to make sure we're doing the right thing and be very positive about it at this point. Yes, Senator Kitchell.
Kristen, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that we're quite sensitive and we hear sometimes, and that is, this is a rural area. It's beautiful up on Pudding Hill. Past history, remember there were neighbors that were concerned about the lighting, and it was, I believe, even maybe there was some litigation around that. So have you heard from people who live in the neighborhood? You know, we see this as really you know, for all the reasons you outlined, as something that really would make sense to bring the airport up, would be, you know, huge investment, and that wouldn't be our top transportation priority or so forth. So I was just wondering, could you speak to the impact, or whether you've heard anything back from the neighborhood that would be affected?
Yeah, unfortunately, with the short timeline, I can't tell you that I have heard directly from neighbors that are, you know, within sight of the airport. And that those will certainly be discussions that we will have going forward. And we do plan a proactive outreach to those neighbors. You are correct in that there were some people that had issues with lighting several years ago. But it's a reality that we all know, that whenever the status quo is questioned, whenever new development is proposed, no matter if it's small or big, there will be some resistance. But we are committed to working through our local zoning and DRB boards and getting input from anyone there, and trying to minimize the impacts of any development that would happen there. It's really hard to speculate beyond some generalities, but I appreciate the question, and yes, we are concerned, and I represent all residents of Linden. So the people around the airport have legitimate concerns that we want to hear.
I had a conversation with Kermit Fisher about that last night, and we've been assured by Secretary Flynn that there's no shortcuts that are going to go on. Basically, we are just seeking permission. They're seeking permission from us to sell the entity, but that doesn't shortchange your guys' process as far as anything. We're not even sure of if the person that has expressed interest, if they're really interested, but we're trying to get to that in case that they are. But it doesn't shortchange any of your guys' process, in any shape or form. There's no deals that are made. They still have to come before you and present their plan to you, and you guys will have total say on how it goes.
Yeah, I think most people, even those who would object, would be reasonable if the process remains transparent and above board. And I'll take you at your word for that, and look forward to seeing where this goes.
Thank you for.
You have more?
No, I didn't. I just wondered whether there'd been any, you know, input, or sometimes when word gets out, the telephone calls start coming, and just wondered what you had.
I expect some calls over the weekend.
Yeah, I think Dana will help take care of that starting Monday, I'm guessing, so.
Right, I can see the headline now.
So getting to your question, I think that is one of the questions that I've heard so far is why are they interested? Why is Beta interested? And I think that is going to lead to the questions and concerns that the public will have. Is it the open acreage that goes with the airport? Is it to expand and develop the whole property? Things like that. Obviously, the infrastructure improvements are, we're aware at the different points that VTrans has come to us with upgrades to the airport. the comments about having the funding and things have always been part of that discussion, and we realize, and we go through the same things. We have a lot of buildings here in Linden, and we're trying to upgrade them all and keep them from deteriorating. So I can't imagine the magnitude of what you guys are dealing with as far as your infrastructure goes. I mean, even in Linden, we struggle with that. So I can appreciate that totally. But not having much information as to what the developer might want to do with the site, the questions at this point have been pretty limited.
I think to throw out some of the answer to your open question is that, you know, we know what we offer up there. We have a willing and able workforce that's moldable and willing. We have 91 and 93 and Route 2. We have the college, Route 5. We have the colleges. We have the college. We have the 4 high schools. We have 2 of the schools that are already bringing students from all over the world, a lot like what Beta is doing right now. So, I mean, there's a lot of, we have probably an easier process. No, that doesn't mean it has to be less rigorous, but we probably have a easier process as far as people wanting development, probably where they are right now, not to take anything away from where they are right now, but it's certainly the area is hungry for opportunity, and sometimes that makes it probably a more easier place to expand a business.
Perfect.
So with that said, I mean, we have, you know, a local zoning and things like that. The more we knew, the earlier we knew it. If we have to make some decisions on what we would need to do there, obviously we can plan for any changes. The airport, my belief is it's a commercial district, but that property is commercial surrounded by rural residential. So if there were a need based on the uses that are being considered by this potential buyer, if we need to make adjustments, the sooner we knew that, the better. Obviously, there's a time that's set for zoning changes to go into effect and things. So we do have warnings and appeal periods and whatnot. So we would want to try and satisfy that if necessary.
I guess I want to go back to your one comment that was made by Mr. Thompson, and that it's doing something for rather than to.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as it was presented to us yesterday, we know we have this valuable asset. We know it's underperforming, it's underutilized. Really, to get the full potential is not going to come from state government. And so it's with that spirit that we, you know, are moving forward, but we want to really be cognizant of any of the issues that might arise so that it can be done in the most constructive way possible. And that's why, you know, we want to certainly work with the community as to how this could be developed and the best way forward. So it's encouraging to get the feedback, at least what you've been hearing so far, that this really provides an opportunity for the region and for Linden that would be that would significantly have benefits to the area.
Yes, I appreciate that.
You know, one of the things that the select board chair Thompson said was about the RFP and having the town have input on that. I didn't know if that's something that you've discussed with AOT at all, or if that's just something that the select board had said, well, we would want to have input. There's nothing in the language that we're looking that would guarantee that. So I didn't know if you had more to say about that part of your comments. That question makes sense.
What? AOT representative said that would be fine to have input from the town.
Well, right. Well, I was asking Mr. Thompson if he felt like is that enough? Just having AOT say that's fine to give input, or were you looking for something more, or was there some negotiation that's already happened about that?
I think we all realize that with the airport being a state property, you know, the state will drive the bus in a sense, and we would just like to remain at the table. and be able to bring forward local concerns. And if they are legitimate, and can be put into the RFP, we would certainly appreciate that.
We do have, I don't know if you've seen the language or not that's before us. We wanted to make sure that it was clear the public use would continue, leases would be protected. So it's important that at least you feel comfortable with the language that's been put before us, which would be an amendment to be added to the RT bill. Has that language been shared with you?
It has.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm that.
Yes.
One other thing I thought was interesting that I learned this morning from the select board members is that about the grand list, because yesterday we were talking like, oh, a lease would be better than a sale from the perspective of some things, but from the perspective of the town, they would probably rather have a sale because then it would be on the grand list. If it was just a lease, then that's still state property and they would be not on the grand list.
There are payments in lieu of taxes,
Do the pilot,
so
yeah, but-
there are other ways to still keep the town whole. But another question, I still think a lease is wildly worth considering. And with Beta, you could, or with any private operator, you can negotiate pretty well for a pilot that is comparable to what you get in a private ownership. But I'm noticing in the new language, I don't know if you saw this, it was just posted this morning. There was language that was floated, I think, from yesterday. But in this new amended amendment, on the second page, page 2, it is talking about the public use aspect, and it specifically says the public use airport within the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems until at least 2050. That's 27 years. Is that a time frame that you think suits the interests and needs of the town of Linden, or would you want to see that 50 years? Or do you have any thoughts on the span of public use assurances in this process?
I think that is short, personally. I think there has been a lot of recent interest in people taking flight training at the airport. And there are some younger people getting into it, and I would hate to see the public use disappear in their lifetime. I think we need to protect this for the next generation. I think there's a great history there at the airport that we don't want to lose. So I would say that shorter time period is not acceptable. And a minimum of 50 years, or I
think we need some clarification.
I'm not sure we even, if a year limit is necessary. But if that's what we need to agree to, I guess the longer the better.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, my question is, I thought the public use was in perpetuity. And this, so we need clarification what this date relates to, because it may be something related to that national system and it doesn't impact the perpetuity on the public use.
So 2 things. 1, I just threw in 2050 as a starting point. And 2, there are 2 things in subdivision 3. So 1, and maybe you want to split this out, ensure that the airport continues to be a public use airport and that the public continues to have access to the airport for general aviation uses. And this is thing 2, that the airport continues to be identified as a public use airport within the NPIAS system, NPIAS until at least 2050. That's what the 2050 applies to. And that has to do with Federal Secretary of Transportation approval of it being either owned by the public, which this wouldn't be, or public use and a referral airport, which is a determination that it's like pulling congestion from other airports. Dan's gonna have to correct me if I got that wrong. And that the other threshold there is if it has like 2,500 passengers per year. So I don't think this is something that necessarily can be guaranteed by anyone because it's subject to federal approval.
But the public, so you're saying, Anthea, that we're talking about the NPIA system, not the public use as the debt.
So
I
we
wonder if we could clarify that.
They're 2 different things here.
It's split 3 into 2 different things. So it would say 3, ensure that the airport continues to be a public use airport and that the public continues to have access to the airport for general aviation uses, semicolon, And subdivision 4, that the airport continues to be identified as a public use airport within the NPIAS until at least 2050, provided that there's federal approval.
Yes,
I like that better.
yeah,
But even with what you just said, without a in perpetuity, I feel like it's somewhat vague that it needs to be in public use.
Because it's easy to conflate the two.
But
When you want to say, ensure that the airport continues to be a public use airport and that the public continues to have access to the airport for general aviation uses in perpetuity, semicolon, and 4.
Better.
yes.
Yeah, and I just think we want to be cautious that we don't unnecessarily limit certainly the public use, but also the potential future uses for a new owner. And I'm not saying that language does, but I would just want to make sure that the investor sees that they're not going to bump up against a limit in 2050 or ever.
That's a different issue.
And Michelle, is it the state's thought process that if the first owner of this airport, whoever it may be, if they have a desire to sell it, that the state would have first opportunity to purchase it back?
Yeah, that would be incorporated into the sales agreement, that the state would have right of first refusal.
And the public use was gonna be a covenant that went with the sale. So that's why I think it is much cleaner to separate that, what would be that federal presence relative to the conditions that would be imposed by the state upon the sale of the property.
Right, because if they do a bunch of investments and change the whole structure kind of, and then go out of business, the state might not want to buy it, and then the next buyer, we want to make sure they have that easement or covenant on the title. You want to buy it?
I just think a lease is gonna be, I'm glad we've had the lease as an option, because I'm imagining that scenario where it's gonna be a lot better for the public's and the state's interest, and it's a long-term lease.
The town, when the pilot was mentioned, I saw a reaction from Linden folks. I didn't know if that was a positive reaction or a negative.
Well, I think that we have to be assured that we can do with what Linden is interested in doing, is to throw a property onto the grand list, no matter how it happens. No matter what the best sale prospect or lease prospect is that the town of Linden is a benefactor of the grand list of that value.
Well,
What about the pilot? Do you think that's?
Well, the lease doesn't, if you go lease, it doesn't put it on the grand list.
Right,
It stays in the ownership of the state. What you would have to do when you negotiate the lease is address that tax impact on the town and have some provision for that pilot payment. I would think that would come with the,
Because they're getting money from the state now, right, through the, or not?
some, yeah.
I think from the town perspective, the ideal scenario would be the property privately owned and therefore fully on our grand list, rather than I think the pilot program, while we do get some reimbursement, it can be fickle depending on budgets and state budgets. So I feel like a much more reliable source of income for the town services that would be provided at the airport property would be if the property's on the grand list.
I can assure you that, I know this is coming up sudden, but you certainly will be involved and be listened to from our perspective, because we want to make sure this is done right. And we need all the input we can have. It's a brand new venture. It came about very sudden. But on the other hand, it's very important that the community be involved. We want to make sure that that open line of communication is always there. So as we go through this, anytime you feel you're not getting the right information, be sure to get a hold of someone here at the agency or us, yeah, or your senator. I don't know who that is.
We appreciate Russ being in the room.
Okay. Anything else we got for this issue this morning? Anyone else on the screen with us this morning that has any input? We have Dana or Kermit?
Well, we
If they're just listening.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure we have the opportunity.
have Michelle on.
Well, what do we need? Is the goal to try to pass this today or to do?
No, I just want to keep everybody informed. Yes, Michelle, what's your thoughts?
Well, one thought would be, we've been working with Anthea since yesterday on modifying the language. And so she has a draft that she could probably put on the screen to walk you through the language. I think a determination of how the amendment will occur would be helpful.
Oh, they're great. Okay, we can do that.
Do you want me to make that change before putting the language up on the screen so you can see the whole
It
thing?
might be helpful, because we could probably vote this out today if we chose to, couldn't we, if we had the right wording?
So there's no rush because we would be doing an amendment to the T-bill,
Right.
which has left this committee, so it could,
Well, that is
we
it.
could wait till Tuesday.
Okay, well, that's helpful.
And then if there should be anything else that emerges from the community, then it gives, the local folks that opportunity and could influence the amendment as we move it forward. So I would think we don't need to move it today.
I'm good with that.
So from a drafting perspective, the way this is written, that's why you see the little like XXX underlined. It's written as an instance of amendment that could be slotted into the Senate Appropriations Amendment. It also could be a standalone amendment that was offered from one or more members of this committee. And it just would change the order in which it's offered because it would be after the Senate Appropriations Committee report. But I can go back to my office and make that change, just split subdivision 3 and 4. And then in an ideal world, you would have sort of more of a final version out there going into the weekend to get more feedback. Okay, I'll be back with you in a second.
Okay,
So what we can do is, once that gets done, we could email it out, so we're not, it's gonna take a few minutes.
Are you guys good with that? If we can just get those changes made and email them to you so you guys can review them and go from there?
Yeah, we would appreciate that, and certainly if we get any strong opinions that differ from what we've already stated over the weekend, we can pass those along to you as well.
yeah, you'll have
You
to.
haven't heard the timeline with what Senator Kitchell had said, that it'd probably be like on Tuesday, so by all means, as you've said, it's a fast process, but I think we recognize it's a good opportunity. But certainly you have people that we're gonna have some input.
Yes,
Okay, one more question before I leave. Do you want something included about the town of Linden being required to be a participant in the RFP process? That's fine.
Yeah.
Should I say for your question?
I think the
No,
more
because-
that is in writing, the
make
more
sure it's open.
it gives people comfort that the process would not be unilateral and
It certainly is community.
be perceived, once again, having something done to you, so.
I'll make those 2 changes. I'll be right back.
So if I may,
Yeah.
Senator, we have already notified the folks from the town that Srini Broussard, my deputy, and Dan DeLaboreti, the Rail and Aviation Bureau Director, will be at the airport on 5:30 Monday evening to talk with folks who are interested in learning more about this. Obviously, timing wise, this will be the first of many conversations. And because there's not been like a long public hearing notice, this is not a public hearing, just a initial opportunity for comment. And then we'll, continue to follow up with meetings with the trustees and the select board at the timing of their interest. But I will plan to bring back to the committee also on Tuesday feedback that we receive on Monday evening.
So it is good to give
Yep.
ourselves
Yep.
a little more time.
So I had indicated in an email that we had a select board meeting at exactly the same time. In speaking with Chris, I am going to attend the airport meeting and the select board will have their meeting. So I will be up at the airport on Monday.
I will be there too.
Okay. Just gonna wait for
No, I think we can adjourn.
Anything else, guys?
What?
We could, Anthea was.
Nothing from us. Thank you.
I thought
Okay.
they were, Anthony
Oh, we
was
could,
back
yeah.
here, but I thought
Oh, no.
Yeah,
we were gonna give the final, the most
Yeah.
recent draft, and, email it or communicate it to the
Yeah.
town.
No, we could let people go about
So-
that.
Well, thank you for coming on and
Yeah.
know this, and we appreciate your input. Like I said, we're not gonna do anything that's going to jeopardize or anything to the community. We want to make sure we work closely with them. This is all new to us. It's something that we had not thought about a month ago, so but we want to make sure we get it as close as right as we can. And so feel free to jump in anytime over the weekend or whenever you're concerned, because it's new to all of us. And we're just learning about it. We just thought it was a great opportunity and hope it works out.
So we look forward to moving forward together. Thanks.
And we do appreciate being included in the process very much so. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Question for our more senior senators. Can you recall a time when we sold an asset like an airport before? And I might pause, that I'm gonna do more research this weekend, is the final two sentences of this, which is, this section shall constitute specific prior approval, including of any sale or lease term. So we're giving carte blanche to just sell this asset. When did we last sell an asset like this, and does that give you any pause?
Well, actually, we did sell a state building in St. Albans, and I think the value of that would sell millions of dollars. So there have been other sales.
This is the one of the, this is too about that one that, so when we're buying it, I guess that was.
We're purchasing.
In my opinion,
And we're doing 108 Cherry Street, which is potentially to be millions of dollars.
Right, that's.
Same process with this language,
Well-
giving full carte blanche to just sell it?
I don't know, you'd have to look at,
Well, BGS has the right to sell it. They have language built to within their,
but transportation has a right to sell, so I guess the question is, are they aligned in terms of, because,
You understand my question? Because like for the Cherry Street, is this how we did it, where we just said, yeah, go sell it?
the state came to institutions to ask permission to sell the building and give the reasons why, which in our
did you require them to come back and get approval of the sale?
no, they had the process of the sale, and they laid it out how they were gonna sell it, because that's the process that they already have the authority to do that
Similar
once.
to what transportation has for transportation.
Absolutely.
But I
Yeah,
guess,
transportation is doing better here. You know, I think because it's just a larger asset and there's more a potential impact to the area. Is that they're coming in and asking involvement of the community. Where when we're doing the Cherry Street, we are working with Burlington to see if they want a first right of refusal. And we're working with them to maintain a presence for some of the employees that are in the building of that agency to stay in Burlington, but as far as to be this involved with what transportation's doing with the community outreach, the community event and all that, we're not doing that.
well, I think we just need to confirm that there's a precedent of giving the agency authority to move forward with the sale in advance and not be subject to subsequent approval of the General Assembly. And it sounds like, I think we've done the approval up front, and we'll have to look at the St. Albans State Office Building, which was in the city of St. Albans. And I know it was, a valuable asset. And I think the approval was in advance. And I guess that's what we need to confirm, that this somehow is not creating precedent or giving authority to an agency that is
I'm sorry,
unbridled, so to speak.
I'm just sorry to say the Cherry Street example further solidifies my concern, because that created a lot of local resistance and wanting details. That this language seems very broad to enable the agency to just go forward and sell the asset, when I'm wondering if we're not doing more, if we need to do more due diligence to hear that process and plan that the agency is going to take part in to sell this asset. I want to see this move forward. I would love to know that this is consistent with how we've approached other
Sales.
major asset sales successfully. That's where I am.
I'm not familiar with the Cherry Street details, so I couldn't answer.
Well, I know these airports have been underutilized for years and years and years. It's a great opportunity. We've had these airports, one of the things I've talked about for many years is, we're not doing very much with them, and they're just a drain. We try to improve a little bit of stealth.
Well, I see it similar to the St. Albans building because that was sold to support economic development and to create the campus for, I believe it was Wyeth Pharmaceutical. And so it was a state-owned asset that was tied into economic development and a particular desire to support that. So I think the Cherry Street is, we've just got a dog of a building that needs to be
Absolutely.
sold.
Absolutely.
I don't.
We're looking at probably $14 to $15 million of monies that we have to put into that building. Just to,
That's just for the basement.
yeah.
But I think we still ought to look at the making sure that what we're doing here, how it aligns with what's been done.
So kind of what I said about that Cherry Street building, Senator Chittenden, was that, and it's not our intent to do that. It's not BTS's intent to do that. And I know we're on live, so I'll be careful about what I say. But to be fair, if we sold that building for $1, the way I look at it as a money guy is that we just made $15 million. Because we're not going to capture, I don't know what the final sale of that
The
building would
value
be.
is the land, in all
Right,
honesty.
exactly.
It's the value.
So my counterpoint to that is the state isn't in it to make money. We're not a profit-seeking enterprise. Once you sell that property in downtown Burlington, you're never going to get it back, and the land's only going to be worth more. The first year on South Burlington City Council, I said that I would be supportive of exploring selling an elementary school, but I was blew up in my face because, and I absolutely agree, and I've learned a lot since then, that is 13 acres of prime real estate that the community cherishes, that if it was let go of, the state's never going to get it back. And so I just think we need to step cautiously into here. And that's why I like the lease idea.
I hear you on that. And
We're not going to get it back. So if it becomes a
no,
problem.
I hear you. And I think just being in that business, you always have to make those decisions. Exactly what, 13 acres versus a quarter-acre lot. I mean, what has more value to your community 100 years from
And a
now?
lot depends on the location.
Right. I did the same thing in the town of Irisburg. A piece of parcel came up that touched the land that we owned, the town land that we owned. And my thing is, hey, should we buy it or shouldn't we? Are we making a mistake by not buying that parcel? We're tasked to looking at the end of eternity to make sure that we're making right decisions, whether we buy or sell. And at the end of the day, we made a decision to buy that piece of land because 50 years ago, there was a fire station that was one building. And now we have a fire station that's this big, and we have a town garage shoved in there. And when you look around where the growth potential is going to be in 50 years from now, the fire station is going to be as big as the building that we had, and we don't have any more land to put the town garage on. So, I mean, I think that it's all decisions that you have to weigh in to what's best going to serve either your town, your community, the state of Vermont, and it's all every situation is different.
Well, that's why the town input's so important.
Right.
That's what,
So
your experience reflects.
there's more language, making sure the town is part of it.
But I think we should just see if this parallels. To something, giving the advance approval.
And I wonder if on that, so the pilot would just, if it's state-owned land, so we're doing pilot payments for the value of that asset from the state's perspective as part of the whole state's pilot system. But if a private entity does investments on the state land, is there a history of that being connected to the pilot? Because the state would own that asset.
So it happens in South Burlington to some extent. The airport is city and state owned, and so we have a tax stabilization agreement. That's what we've been to court for, and so we agree to certain amounts of money. And there's something different than what he's asking about.
I'm just saying the state doesn't own any interest in the Burlington Airport.
But the state monies, the city owns it. So yes, the city owns it, has proprietorship. We have a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the city of South Burlington. under the
But
jail.
I don't know if this would be different because of this private ownership of a, you know, like, so if they built a factory there, how does that pilot
Well,
negotiation?
You know, I
work?
guess that's the big thing. Because if the land is not owned, but all the improvements are owned, how that's treated for tax purposes, that's, I think that perhaps it's like camps that are built on leased forest land. And I
Here.
think, yeah, so I think,
You're still taxed,
I
right?
think you might be taxed on those structures that
Right.
are privately
Or
owned.
they wouldn't need a pilot, they'd say like.
Right.
No,
You're
I
not
would
in-
say the land is still pretty valuable. We want a pilot on the land that the state
Well, the
continues.
state could still continue to pay a pilot on the land, but a new owner of the new hangars or whatever they.
Might have to,
It's beyond the ground list, even though they don't own that.
I don't know. I think we'd have to get clarification from the tax department if we went the,
Yeah, who, yeah,
because those improvements would be owned by the,
We could look at the Burlington Airport, Beta's building a huge facility, but they didn't buy the land underneath. So Burlington still owns that land. and they-
no, the tax department could tell you how the
Yeah.
property tax would work.
so I assume South Burlington is getting full assessed value of that new building.
So, I think those are questions worth asking.
Okay, well, are we done then?
I think.
on the way back.
Oh,
I think she was just gonna walk through it, right?
yes.
We don't
Well, was
have
it-
4 till 11:30.
7:30.
Should have done it earlier.
No, sure. But we've got morning committees that are still meeting.
They need to get their work done.
Well, having morning committees shut down next week doesn't exactly help me at all.
Why? Oh, because you're morning.
Well, because really,
We'll get the budget out this.
we'll get it out if it kills us. It might. Maybe, could we just go off live? I run next door and when Anthea comes back or
Whatever, go ahead.